really should be out on a bike today. It is too nice to be inside.
Oh, so you're real close to the Pisgah, aren't you, Brandon?
Real close to what?
The Pisgah National Forest?
No, I'm over by the W&OD trail just outside DC. So I ride from the Vienna area of Northern Virginia all the way out toward Ashburn, where all the data centers are.
Gotcha. I guess in my head, like it's uh it's a smaller area than it really is. And for some reason I had you also in Carolina, and the Carolinas in my head and not Virginia.
And it's beautiful out, like 75 degrees. I was just out watering the yard and thinking, why am I going back inside for me? Just go, just be free.
Never ridden out there. Need to bring a bike out there sometime.
The W&OD is it's reclaimed railroad trail, so very flat, very straight, very boring, but also not very many cars. So I know a lot of people that get bored with just going one direction straight and not a lot of interesting stuff, but I'll take that over getting run over any day. I did throw a few things on the agenda, but anyone that wants to throw other stuff on there, feel free. Josh, good to see you today, especially talking about conformance stuff. I think Josh heard me call his name out and was like, that's it, I'm leaving this thing. Yes, as folks are still showing up, this might be a somewhat quiet week because I wouldn't be surprised if some people are already starting to make their way over to KubeCon. And that gets into the first agenda item, which is, I suspect we're going to go ahead and cancel this on Thursday, the 21st. Mostly because of KubeCon, but also because we do have a meeting on site at KubeCon on the 22nd. So anybody that wants to attend on the 22nd in person, they've got a room. That's all in our meeting notes, which I dropped in the link. And we can also jump online virtually. So anybody that wants to join the same Zoom, we can join it remotely. It's going to be an early one though. 8 a.m. Eastern, 6 a.m. Pacific, and feel free to shift time zones as appropriate. And I haven't verified that that time zone is correct with daylight savings right now, so who knows? Double check before you would show up for that one. All right, so other than that little minor bit of agenda-ish items, shame that we didn't have Josh anymore. I wanted to chat about conformance stuff with him. I am working on a blog post for the image and distribution 1.1.0 release. I'll push that up eventually as a draft and then throw it over in the Slack for people to comment on, tell me that I am terrible at English or completely forgot a whole bunch of important ideas. So that will go up at some point in the not too distant future, hopefully. We will see how quick I can get that knocked out. And otherwise, I just threw a couple little general items in there. And I think one of them, conformance test. Let me get some links for these things. I can do a screen share as well. Find these first. So distribution, they had a debug on the Reggie client. Need a second to get screens moved around and also to update that ROM joined us. Just 1 second. So this one, I need to go dig in and see what's going on for what they're running into, because the concern apparently is that there are some values being leaked. And the initial change was just, we need to make the Reggie not log any debug information when you set debug equals to 0. Unfortunately, if you then do that, all of the actual reports have items that'll expand. Can I pull that up? We have
Oh, so some of the data to populate the reports is actually dependent on debug being true. It needs to be split.
correct. Let me see if I can find that conformance page. It's a different repo entirely, so I should probably go find that first. I can never find what I'm looking for. There it is, OCI conformance. That's why I can't find it. Gotta type the OCI dash. So on the website, let me move some things around. Anytime you open one of these reports up and say, show me the test report for something, it's got a whole bunch of items here. And when you expand any of them, it includes, here's the headers that went to the request, here's the response, in this case, an error message, and that was 404. We're all good there for this specific thing. Each of these expands. And if you turn off the debugging, this is the debug that was getting flipped off by changing, go back to this PR. This item here, Reggie with debug. So if we turn that off, all of our conformance reports come back up empty, and that's no good. So pretty sure that's intentional. We leave debugging in there. And the reason I liked having Josh in here a minute ago was because he commented that we actually do have some stuff that fixes the underlying issue that was trying to be fixed, which was not necessarily that we had logs at all, but that some of the logs included credentials somewhere in there. And so there was a mention that there was an authorization header. Josh's link pointed to a regex that on all the debugs should see the authorization header and null it out. So something might not be happening there. Need to double check. I only just saw that just before the meeting, so I'm not sure what I might be missing.
Yeah, that's a pretty aggressively structured regular expression. Like I need to look at what the matching groups are, but possible that something is just slightly not matching that regular
I'm off by
expression.
one on one of these numbers here. Yeah, I haven't gone through and
Oh,
counted
no,
them.
oh, I don't even mean an off by one. I just mean that like that's a very like, and I don't see all the look ahead and look behinds, but like that's a very inflexible regular expression, I guess. Like it's quite possible they just have something that regular expression just doesn't quite match, and so the replacement never kicks in.
Yeah.
Like the safer thing would probably be because this appears to be targeting authentication headers, even if it doesn't match on the header itself. Like probably the safer thing would be to sanitize all authentication headers and only pass through known to be innocuous fields rather than the other way where some things might slip through with this format.
I think it's looking for this here. So it's
Well,
probably,
it's on every log line.
yeah, so it's
But
going through
what
the
it's doing
overall
is it's
logs, but it's looking for anything that matches any of these things. So you have to find, it looks like he's checking for white space in front, then the string, a colon, and then whatever the value is.
yeah. And I guess what I'm trying to get at is that like it's maybe a little stricter because well again I haven't looked at it in detail. I need to indent that so I could parse out what it's actually doing. But
Looks like case insensitive match, I think is the question I double check on that one. Optional quote
yeah,
visiting.
that's setting the insensitive option for the whole expression.
Yeah. Optional double quote, white space, unlimited amount there. And then any of these strings, more white space. That's optional, the double quote, and then a colon or an equals. And then, yeah, I need to go through and double check the double
That's
backslash. Well, I guess the double backslash because he's using double quotes on the overall string. So this might have been easier to follow if it was backticked instead of double quoted, but that's okay.
yeah, this should be a I don't remember what Go calls them, but a raw string with backticks.
And that's optional. All binding strings. So yeah, I have to go through and debug this and figure out what is potentially going through that shouldn't be and sort that out. But overall, I think the fix is more than we want to fix. We need to look at the actual problem that they're encountering, which is they're seeing small headers in there somewhere. Any other thoughts on that one before I jump to the more chatty one that I think I've got on my agenda item here? Don't have any links. Let me add some links to our notes for this stuff as well. The other item I was thinking of was just starting to think about what next steps we want to jump into. And so the one that kind of got my attention was tag pagination, mainly because it's been getting a lot of attention this week in the threads in different places. I had a bunch of people this week saying, hey, why isn't this even done yet? Of course, I think we pushed this off until after the release, but it had been sitting out there for a while even before that. And apparently this is causing some issues for folks right now. So they're looking for us to stop deferring forever. We had two solutions to this. Find John's because John put one of his up there too. Or did he not say? I'll go find it real quick.
Just trying to refresh my memory. This was one of the things that broke when half the spec got deleted, right?
That's exactly what it was. And so that's what John just went back and just reverted as is. And I threw a comment on that saying, well, wouldn't that be potentially breaking for anybody that followed the spec? And so we got multiple alternative options here of how to do this. And again, I'll update our minutes for this one. So we got all these PRs and whatnot in here. Need to put my keyboard somewhere other than right under the microphone. It's John's. Get mine here as well. I had multiple options for this one. And I'll get the underlying issue here as well. So yeah, the spec itself just says if a client tells you how many to request, you must give them that many unless you're at the end of the list, and then you can return less than that. And everybody panicked on that because that means that clients could just put 99999 for the number of tags to return just to get all of them. And a bunch of registries didn't like that behavior. So they asked us to give them the ability to just force pagination on end users. And the original spec had some language that said there is going to be a link header, and if it's there, you must use it. The challenge of the way that wording is in there is that anybody that follows the existing spec now has the challenge that if they requested a limit and they received less than that, is it because the registry forced pagination, or is it because they're at the end of the list? They don't know which. They'll just assume they're
Although,
at the end of the list.
I mean, I've been ruminating on this a little bit. My thought is still mostly like, if any clients were reading this deeply flawed spec language that, like, yes, got maintainer approval and was published in a release, nonetheless, um, real implementations like Hub, ECR, Quay don't follow the like what the client says the server must follow approach. So I'm not sure that the blanket revert isn't the best way forward, just because it describes the original intended state, and the actual state of the world didn't shift just because the spec language got completely screwed up.
There are a lot of people who've written bad clients out there is the thing I'm really worried about. I know when I was writing my client, I ran into the same thing, and it was Quay was the one that I saw it from first because their limit is something like 50. 50 rather than 1,000 that you'll see on other registries.
Yeah, I mean, my point is mostly that like those clients are either broken or will have to figure out that they're broken at some point. Like it's been that way for years and years. Like I can find issues from 2015 with your client doesn't find all the tags on Docker Hub for like a Node.js client.
Yeah, part of the path I was looking at in my own proposal was that if the registry is going to say the client is broken and shouldn't be doing that, give them an error. Give them a 400 error response, and that way they don't assume blindly that they're getting everything right. If the client makes a query and says, give me 200 tags, and the registry turns back with 50 and a 200 response, I feel like clients are in the right for assuming that they got them all. I'm not sure if there's an in-between ground that we can go between just a straight revert and saying, okay, the spec has been wrong for all these years, versus how can we make it that clients would get some kind of positive feedback that the registry just doesn't like you, you need to upgrade to work with us. Is this too close to KubeCon for folks to be thinking about this right now?
Definitely, I don't think you have as many of the registry people in the room as you'd want.
Yeah, like even some of the regulars are being quiet today, but they might be also multitasking like I usually am. Other than that, the only other agenda item I threw on there was to do some brainstorming to say, what if we just punted on this and came up with a new tag v2 API? What would that look like? What would we want to include in there? What features do we want to add? And that would kind of give us an option of saying, okay, fine, the old tag API is broken. How can we give clients a new version that they can request? And the nice thing about giving a new version they can request is that the server then knows affirmatively that when they make that request that they're getting a client that knows how to handle this stuff. And so they can safely force that tag, the link header for pagination. Where are you posting here? Content too large, 413. The Yeah, that might be what you want to do there as well. Either way, the feedback that we were looking to do was also to tell clients. The option I was giving was give them a header that you can tell the client, hey, we're not going to let you do this, but here's your header here's how many tags you could request. And so for someone like Quay, they could just set this to 50 and say, hey, our limit is 50. You can't request more than that. Come back again when you want that many or less. All right, we got a quiet crowd today. This has spawned endless debates in other places. I think right now
For
it's
the
just, go ahead.
sorry, I was zoned out as you assumed. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Um, I mean we do pagination. I think this says that we do. We also don't do pagination the way that the spec asks us to do it. Is there what is
Is it
the
the link
appetite,
header?
I guess, for using the link header but not requiring pagination to always use the last query parameter? So
And that's probably why some people didn't like my proposal, which was I was trying to say the link header was a may, but that everything we had already put in the spec was stuff that still need to be supported. And the challenge you've got is you're not going to support that at all. You're just only supporting the link header.
yeah, if clients want to paginate with us today, they have to use the link header and they can't use the last parameter the way they want to, and this has caused issues. So I guess we're thinking about trying to make that change internally, but in general, we prefer I think the link header allows registries to kind of do their own thing and would also allow us to use opaque pagination tokens instead of clear text.
Looks like even John still says something about the last header, the last parameter.
Yeah.
Trying to see if that wasn't there before, but he didn't change any of the APIs. He took the, and as John did this, he just went back and pulled an old commit and just reverted it. So he took some of this stuff out. But otherwise, I think it's still there implicitly, one way or another. Yeah, I feel like all the versions still include that, unfortunately.
Makes sense.
I say unfortunately because I don't think you're the only one that doesn't support it.
Is there a, yeah. For, do we have other, I guess we sort of did this for the refers API, right? I think in general, having to specify, like the spec maybe doesn't need to specify this specific of an implementation. It already has, so there are probably a lot of clients that rely on it, but going forward, not using the last query parameter seems reasonable.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of if is there a way to take that out of the spec without just breaking everybody. I don't know that there is, but at the same time, I know that a lot of places don't support it. At the same time, what we took from the refers was we said the link header must follow the RFC and just gave a link over there and said, according to this one version of it. So we took
I guess I would even be in favor of saying should. The link header should be included and clients should use the link header over the last parameter.
So the must here is if included. And that if included is doing a lot of lifting right there, which means that this is a completely optional field. But if you define this optional field, you need to follow the RFC.
I was talking about line 534, changing the may to a should.
Yeah. I'm comfortable with that. Not sure what other folks think. The thing I'm trying to make sure that we do though is for clients that aren't aware of that, how can we give them feedback? Like the client can't tell you that it's going to support pagination with the link header. Can it?
The client can't, but the server says it pretty loudly when you pass the last token and we return an error.
So you're just going to do a direct error, you're just going to give them a 400. That's fine for me. I'm very comfortable if the server comes back with a 4XX, whatever the return code is you pick for that one. Because that gives the client a very affirmative, hey, you request something where it's not going to support. So that I'm comfortable with. The thing that I'm trying to avoid is that there are a lot of clients out there that will say, give me all the tags and set into some arbitrarily high number. And if the registry is going to look at that number and just disregard it and give a number less than n, how can we give some feedback? Or if they don't specify any n, and then they're assuming they're going to get all the tags. How do clients get some kind of feedback that what they requested just isn't going to work? My fear with putting all the dependency right now in the link header is that it's a silent failure for clients. They'll return the first 50 responses and then think they got everything because they were following an older version of the spec and didn't know that they were getting less than the full list. They didn't know to look for the link header.
But should, the spec today, we have a bunch of registries that don't support the spec the way it's written. And I think probably the last query parameter we can figure out how to add. That's not really what I'm talking about, but pagination, I don't think registries are ever going to go to a world where they're always going to support returning like an arbitrary list, arbitrarily sized list. And so
I feel like there are
if
two options here.
I think we
I feel
should
like they're
tell
Go ahead.
clients that they shouldn't expect to get everything back when they don't set N.
Which
And
is what
then
the spec used to
also,
say.
which is what the spec used to say. Is that true?
Sure is.
That's what John was reverting us to.
And so, and then do we specify what the registry should do if they get an N bigger than they support?
That's where we have a lot of disagreement, which is if there's no N or an N that's bigger than what they supported, I think if we lean on the link header, we just silently give them less than what they expected, and we're hoping that they know that they're supposed to follow the link header, which is the risk. Go ahead, John.
So the problem I see is that we have, and sorry, I had a conflict, but this is my favorite topic currently. There are two like mutually incompatible choices that clients and registries have made, and we need one of them to go away. And so we need some very strong spec language to make it clear that one of them is wrong. Right. And I think those two choices are some registries will give you a default page size if you don't specify N. And some registries have a maximum page size that they'll allow. And so as a client, I want to specify a large page size so that I don't send you, say, 1,000 requests. I'd rather send you 10. But if I say, give me 10,000, up to 10,000 tags, then ECR will return an error because they say, I don't support 10,000. In my opinion, the reasonable thing to do is either to say, if you don't specify N, we'll return the maximum size that we can support. Or if you do specify N, then we'll return the maximum size we support. If it's larger than what we support, rather than returning an error. Right now what we have is there's no good way to say, like, give me as much as you are willing to give me. How do we do that?
Yeah, that's where I feel like if clients could indicate that they've supported pagination, this would be a whole lot easier because then the server would know they can just use that header and let the clients do it. But there's no client method we've documented so far that says, hey, just FYI, I support this so you can use that, which leaves servers in this in-between state where they don't know if the client supports it or not. So if they give them one response, clients might get a false positive.
I mean, I think that's what the spec's for. The spec should just tell clients they have to support pagination. We didn't do that before. That's a bug.
We
We have to fix that.
Yeah,
We did do that before.
We did say that you need to support the link header.
Did we do it to?
Took it out,
did we do it to
and
that
then-
extent? Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
Go ahead, John. We had the link header in the old version of the spec, and so this is what John has taken us back to there. We also have a release version of the spec that doesn't have that in there and has very explicit language that says you give us an N, and if you give us that N, you should see that many responses. If you don't give us an N, you should see all the responses. And depending on what clients are designed to do and how we want to fix this, we're probably going to break somebody.
The exact language that got deleted was, the presence of the link header communicates to the client that the entire result set has not been returned and another request must be issued.
That works for me. Which means that registries, like clients can ask for end results and registries should then return up to end results, and if they have more, a link header.
That behavior sounds great to me.
That behavior sounds great to me.
It's decided. Just kidding.
All the registry people like it, all the client people don't, but I don't dislike it horribly because I can easily write a client that works with it. I just know that there are people that have written clients that do not know anything about this.
We do have static implementations that might return more, which is just a tag list of files, and there's no pagination even supported. How do we account for that? You said at least or not more, right?
I think there's probably a should somewhere that gives wiggle room to static implementations, but I'm not sure about that.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Yep, sounds good.
Yeah,
long as
so
it's not
a
a
static
master
implementation,
yeah.
there should be a way to not support pagination at all. And then there should be a way for registries that support pagination to gracefully handle clients that ask for more than they support.
Generally, the party that would like pagination to happen is the server, and clients really do just want everything. So I think that's kind of a fine default mode for a static registry to return everything, but I could be wrong.
In that case, the link header wouldn't even be there, but the n parameter would not be honored because it'll just return like a full list of tags, which if the n is 10, you would see like 1,000 tags come back. That's kind of what happens right now.
Yeah. I'm fine with, yeah, registries should listen, like should try to return end results. Or some wiggle room about what they actually return, and clients must look at the link header if it's present, with the understanding that yes, this is not what we said in the past, but the spec should evolve in this. We did.
We didn't say it in the 1.0 spec.
We also didn't, I think we didn't, we weren't as clear as, were we as clear as this in terms of saying registries may return less than n? And
that's my concern, is that this is the current text in the spec, which says that, hey, you can return less than that number, but only on the last response. And otherwise you must include exactly that number. It was explicitly called out there, which I understand why people would write an implementation following that, not knowing that registries didn't work with it. I feel like the fix is just start giving people 400 responses, or 413, pick a 400 error code in there somewhere.
Oh, no. Return what you have.
I think I agree with John.
Because like Crane has to send a page size of 1,000 because ECR will fail if it's bigger than that. And so if registries return an error in this case, then we end up with lowest common denominators page size, which sucks.
Yeah.
And what if you didn't pass any in Crane?
Then I get very small pages from certain registries.
You're going to get very small page sizes from certain registries no matter what you do. Right? Quay is only going to give you 50 no matter what you ask for.
That's fine. I'm just trying to thread a needle between a bunch of weird implementations. And I think the intent to say, hey, give me a lot is best expressed through a large page size and not through a lack of page size. But I do wish that lack of page size was give me as much as you want or as much as you can. But a lot of people have a different max size and default size, unfortunately.
Is there an option to thread the needle with another parameter? N equals auto, something like that. Or don't use N because someone will try to parse as an integer and throw back an error at you. So some other parameter.
I think it depends on how much faith you have that other registries will implement this behavior. Maybe, I mean, it's a reasonable idea. I haven't thought through it.
I'm more looking for a way that clients can positively affirm that they support the link header. And that way, if a client isn't doing that, then the safe assumption for the registry is that they're using the old 1.0 behavior and that they should give them back a 400 error and tell them to upgrade the client.
I mean, the thing is that registries are already doing this. And so any client that expects the different behavior is already broken. It's not like changing the spec language is going to break the client. It's just making it more explicit that the client is broken and it's the client's fault and not the registry's fault.
But isn't that the problem? That clients are broken today, they don't know they're broken. And us changing the spec language doesn't give clients the feedback to know that they're broken. They're going to keep assuming they're just fine.
I still feel we're not changing the spec language, just bringing back what was accidentally removed, right? Isn't that the premise of this? I think there's additional stuff that we can do, but getting the spec back into consistency would be good, is what I thought the overarching issue was.
That's my position, yes.
It's once we put it back to that language, we break clients that wrote themselves against the 1.0 spec.
They're already broken.
True. But they don't know they're broken, is where I'm going with it. I'd like to give them some feedback that says, look, you're broken today, you don't know it. Let's fix the spec in a way that says, not only are you broken, the spec tells you you're broken, but now the registry server is also telling you you're broken.
I don't think there's a way to do that without making things worse for everybody. The specification ultimately just needs to like tell people the right way to do things. And
I feel like the role of the spec for this problem is to tie break an argument of whose responsibility it is. And I think we all agree about it. It's just like the mechanical, RFC spec language hoops we have to jump through to claim we're not breaking something in a bad way, make us do things that are illogical and don't make any sense for reality, right? It's like, oh, this wasn't in 1.0, so we're the bad people for making a breaking change. It's like, I don't know, like it's errata basically. It's not really like a change so much as it is a mistake. And I think making the spec reflect reality is more important than going through the RFC motions of maintaining spec language. But this brings me back to a different PR that was contentious, where I feel like making a breaking change when you don't have to is a bad idea. And I think making registries break clients today so that they're more aware that they're already broken seems worse than making some clients work better by I guess if there's new registries that don't support the link header thing, that's bad too, right? I don't know where I'm going with this, but anyway, merge my PR. Bye.
Go ahead, Josh.
I have to say also, I agree with John here. I was responsible in large part for the removal originally, and so I feel poorly about that. It wasn't intentional to remove the functionality that most clients were doing at that time. So I think it's reasonable to correct that oversight from several years ago when most of the libraries powering all this stuff is still doing it that way, the way I understand. So just saying what's already been said, but I'm gonna go get my bagel, but I'm listening.
Still circling the head to figure out, is there a way we can do this that anybody following the 1.0 spec would be completely broken? Because I mean, when we're saying we're trying to use the spec to say someone's doing it right and someone's not, today it says all the clients doing it right. It's infeasible, but it's what the spec says.
So basically, is the question that in 1.0 you would get all the tags, is what the assumption was, because the thing got deleted?
Yeah, the 1.0 text's up here on the left, I think a lot of clients are looking at, which was if you requested 1,000 tags from the registry,
Yeah.
and the registry returned back and gave you 50, that's the end of the list. You're done. We didn't define a link header at all in there, anything like that. We just said, you tell us how many you want to get, and you get up to that, and then the last header was how you jump to the next step. So,
but we do have precedents where we actually made the media type a must in the image manifest. That would have broken clients that assumed that the media type did not exist. So this is, in my opinion, is a correction, right? So I'm
we
still
didn't make it a
leaning
must,
to.
though. We made it a should.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
In the conformance test, it's a must, right?
In the image spec, I'm 99% sure it's a should. I'll double check that.
But anyway, this will go into 1.2 and we can mark it as a correction rather than, hey, this was the problem. And point to the point to Josh's, hey, accidentally it got removed. And so it's just a rephrasing of what it was. I mean, honestly, like you said, those clients are broken and we're just helping them to kind of fix it in the right way if we actually put this in.
Yeah, unfortunately, when we fixed it over there, we said should. And we were like, should because for very good reason you really want to do this, but it was just a should.
Well, we would do the same language here, right? Like they should follow the link header, but it's up to them whether they want to follow it or not.
Yeah, should seems fine to me, because like, what if you do only want the first page?
Yeah.
You know, I think it is technically correct to be should.
I just wonder if we want to go through and do a survey of all the registries like we did in the past and identify what the behavior is from a lot of registries out there. How many tags do they support up to? Do they support the last field? Do they support the end limit? And do they support the link header? All right, with less than 10 minutes left and people are actually talking, Does anybody have agenda items you want to talk about next week during the KubeCon? Or maybe a first question, how many folks here are going to be able to attend that meeting? Because it's going to be very early for folks on the West Coast, even kind of early for people on the East Coast. Friday, March 22nd, 2 p.m. Central Eastern Standard.
Maybe. Unlikely.
I think it works out to 6 a.m. Pacific if Amy's comment is correct and accounted for daylight savings time, which is inconsistent between the two right now. Does the silence mean everybody else is not going to, or you just don't want to admit you'll be there? Or that your mouth is just full of a bagel?
I've lost control of my life having a toddler, so I have no idea what the future holds for me. I'll be there if I can, but I have no idea.
I mean, 6 a.m. meetings with a toddler sounds like a blast.
It's very unlikely I would enjoy that.
I was being very sarcastic because I have no idea what life with a toddler at 6 a.m. is like, but I can't imagine it'll be good. All right, so next week may be very thinly attended, would be the proper word, I guess. Anybody that is going to make it there have agenda items you want to chat about? Otherwise, it might just end up being a little bit of a birds of a feather, and whoever shows up, shows up. Some things I am thinking about is, what about the next tag listing API? And if we're doing this in a 1.2, the fixing the pagination in a 1.2, we might be able to piggyback a new version of the tag API in there. I'm going to try. Y'all will probably shoot me down, but I'll at least make an attempt. Anybody have features you want to make sure that show up in there? I'm thinking untag manifest would be a bare minimum. I also want to see it with some kind of extensible JSON format so that people want to put more data in there. Maybe a poll counter, some other details that users are looking for that can go in there per registry if they want to include something like that. But just some kind of extensible tag syntax, not just a string. And then I know that probably something Ram has been thinking about is supporting some of the search scenarios. And so can we list content by artifact type or annotation? Or a couple of things that I've been thinking of. Sasha, go ahead.
Is there any interest in if I kind of put together a PR for tag history, like this digest, what was the history of this tag? Anything like that? Or would that fall under another category? Again, it's probably going to be a 6 months to 1 year effort to kind of get anybody even to look at it and implement it. But I think this is something that's come up in many places. So I just wanted to gauge if that's something that people are interested in.
I'm curious how we'll format that, but you're not the only person who's asked, so I'll throw that in the list here of something we want to look at. I don't know if we want that as a separate PR or just include that in the future tag listing API.
I had to check if it was a publicly known thing. ChainGuard has a tag history thing that we put on our registry, and people have liked it so far. So Sajay, I didn't know if you already had something in mind, but let me know if that link is public. I know Jason had a lot to do with this, so I wonder if he was interested in upstreaming it.
Is this a separate API? Or did you overload
It's
the
a
tag?
yeah, it's a separate API. I'm looking at it. What is it?
Chain guard history.
Yeah, it's underscore chain guard at the end, but like imagine that being tag / history or something. I'm not doing it justice. Jason, I think, wrote the whole thing. So
Yeah, that
But
sounds pretty cool. I mean, given that we don't have any PR or any implementation, I think this is more than a great place to start. We
Awesome.
did this work when we did like the referrers on top of distribution. We prototyped it, so we wrote an extension to be able to get because the distribution implementation does keep like a log of tags in the histories in some way. So we could actually just expose the data. That's what we did the prototype for. But we can just standardize on the tags schema and use something like this. That would also be cool.
Awesome.
And right now under tags, we've got tags list. So I could easily see us adding a tags history in the future.
So Brandon, I think the base premise for this use case was, can I delete this image, right? Like if this was ever tagged as a 1.0, you don't want to delete it, or if something that has actually been a stable tag and those kind of things. So it gives some insights into what can be kept and what cannot be kept, or if this digest was never tagged or something like that. So, or what are the digests that actually had this tag? Those are the kind of things that we could do with this.
So did you do that on your history API for saying, give me the history of a digest, or is it only a history of a tag?
Okay, so I haven't written this down anywhere. So I think the use case would probably be the first thing to kind of put out as to what are we answering here? Like if you're going to answer for this table tag, what were the digests? That's a separate question versus, hey, this digest had X tags, and maybe we'll answer both, but they'll be different use cases.
Yeah, that's why I was asking. When I'm looking through here, it looks like what ChainGuard documented and what I suspect happens in distribution today is that it knows for a single tag the various digests that tag has had over its history. And what you're asking for, Sajay, is if I give you a digest, tell me all the tags it has ever had.
Both, but I would prioritize all the digest. This API that you're showing right now, which is the digests of a given tag, is probably higher priority than the second one that I was talking about. Is what I'm thinking.
Yeah, it's for people who wanted to like pin to digests, but don't want to use tags, but want to pin to digest, but actually do want to use the tag. So they consume that feed and then run whatever tests or whatever they need to do on the digest, and then update their things to use that Docker files and stuff like that. I think both would be neat though, and they're kind of hand in hand.
Yeah, I think they're both a good idea. I wonder if that would be parallel with the revamp of the tag listing, or if that's something that the tag listing would do in addition to other stuff we're thinking about. I think it might make more sense parallel, just make a separate API. Since we've got the tag / list today, just tag / history makes a lot of sense.
I mean, an open question: who's actually has the energy to revamp the tag listing API? I mean, it's like it will end up with a lot of questions and discussions, right?
Well, he ran away, but I'm pretty sure John and I
Okay.
are probably the two people that are the most interested in doing it. So it's been on my list for a while. And oh, we ran out of time, so good reason for everybody else to jump too. On that note, anybody that's going to be there next week, look forward to seeing you up super early. Otherwise, enjoy a week off, and we'll see you in 2 weeks from today. Have a great one.
Thanks all.